Effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Vance, also known as Ricky Vance, and a great episode for you today. Returning guest, Jason Bermas, researcher, filmmaker. I'm sure you guys know who he is by now. One of his documentaries is 9/11 Loose Change, one of the most important documentaries, I think, in the alternative media community, because a lot of us are doing this because of the impact that documentary had on our lives. Also, Jon Fitch, who's a mutual friend, or we have a mutual friend, Jason Bermas. Jon Fitch joined us today to kind of do a roundtable three-man discussion, and we had a blast just bullshitting, hanging out, talking about everything and anything. Really interesting guy. He's an author. He's a podcaster. He's a MMA legend. It's cool because I grew up watching him fight, and it's really fun now to have him on and just kind of see how interesting of a guy he is outside of the octagon. So really interesting, fun conversation. I'll put all the links to their social media accounts and their YouTube channel, all that stuff in the show description. I'll also put links to all my stuff. I have a Patreon page if you want to support the show. I also have a PayPal account I'll put in the show description. So if you want to tip the show, if you want to donate some money, please do. You don't have to sign up for Patreon. It's a way of supporting the show. I also have now super excited to announce a merch store. It's the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. MERCH. No need for www. Some people have been telling me the link hasn't worked. And that's why, because if you put www for some reason, it's not working. I'll probably just buy that domain name and just have them both working. But just put in URL, the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com, or just look in the show description and you'll find the links there. I'm really excited about this merch store. I have tons of different hoodies, shirts, tank tops, and I have tons of designs that I'm working on that hopefully I'll have out and available very soon too. So if you want to support the show that way, please do. Also, think about the show as a value for value type thing, similar to Grimerica, similar to No Agenda, Jenny Brimey. If you're getting a value out of this, which I know a lot of you guys are because you're hitting me up all the time, if you're getting some type of value to help improve your mind, your perspectives, your worldview, then just contribute something similar to that value. And I don't know, I guess that's what I've always wanted you guys to do, but it seems like it works better if I word it that way. So I'm going to give it a try, give you guys plenty of options, different ways of supporting the show. We have a Patreon page, a PayPal account, we have a merch store now. And of course, one of the most important things is share the show, tell people about it, rate the show, review the show, and that goes a long way too, because I know for some people financially it's hard. So if you can't financially help the show, that's another way of helping just get the word out there and whatnot. So also, if you like the theme song, which I know a lot of you guys do, but not a lot of you guys purchase it, it's available everywhere: iTunes, Google Play, I believe Spotify. Look up the Ripple Effect Podcast by the artist Theory 6. That's the word theory and the number 6. It's my music project, my solo music project after my band broke up. I started the music project. That song influenced this podcast, the title of this podcast. And till this day, probably one of my most important pieces of work, something I'm super proud of. So if you can support this show that way, awesome. Thank you. And merch store, Patreon. Oh yeah, I'm on PARLER, RV36, Twitter, RV36, Instagram, RV36. Our YouTube channel is RV36. Obviously, RV36 will get you to all my stuff, or you can just search Ripple Effect Podcast. That's it. Enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace. how'd you and Jason hook up? How'd you guys meet? I feel like
interwebs. I think I watched his stuff for a long time, and then just I started getting more into making stuff and on YouTube and whatever. And I've met a lot of friends in the last 4 years on Twitter. Honestly, it's kind of funny. Like I would think some of the people I'm closest to are people I've met in the last 4 years since the last election cycle on Twitter. Because I kind of learned like what people were morons and what people were free thinkers.
You're not wrong. Like, I feel like especially the last 4 years, I mean, maybe it's because I've had my sister and her kids along. By the way, got the place, moving October 1st to Iowa. It happened.
Awesome.
So I'm pretty pumped about that. But you're right, John. Like, I even the friends that I have had over the years, especially now in the last, 6 months, even the ones that are relatively close, you can't see as much. I can't even see my brother as much. Like, it's pretty nutty. And
I mean, I was kind of isolated with the bad marriage and all the other stuff that was going on with me. So like, I've been in quarantine for some years now. I've been in quarantine probably since like 2013, 2014.
Oh. But yeah. It was definitely because we're almost on our 1 year on mixed martial mindset. I looked it up. I just did episode 49, and it was on the run up to the welterweight Grand Prix in Bellator. He was just about to fight Rory McDonald, and I remember we were following each other on Twitter. I had him on my show, and then I'm a huge mixed martial arts fan anyway. And then to talk to Fitch and have a
I was doing those live streams. I think you stopped by some of the live streams.
Yes, I was exactly. And at the time it was before it was Jon Fitch Knows Nothing, which is what
shake break.
Doing the shake break. So usually around noon or so he would come on, and I would have kicked out a video or two, but then I was making thumbnails and looking at ideas, and I'd listen to his hour where he was just kind of talking about what was going on in the news and what he was doing for training, and how. Around,
I could probably go back down through the history of my videos. And when I started doing thumbnails, that was because you told me to start. Hey, you're missing out on the thumbnails. You got to get on the thumbnail game. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, so here we are, Ricky. I mean, it's kind of like one of those things where Fitch has got a fight coming up again. You're like a week and a half out, another big one versus the next generations of Gracie. He's got to do some like ridiculous COVID 1984 nonsense. I've got people getting picked up in dorm rooms after they get told 10 minutes from now we're coming to get you, and then put into an ISO room, which is a room with no windows, no bedding in some cases. Like, this is, I mean, the world is weird right now, man. Like, tell Ricky what you're going to have to do. Like, you're leaving early this coming week, and then you have a whole protocol.
Well, I mean, we've already started the protocol because we had to self-test. They sent us a, look at this, my monitor here a little bit. Yeah. They sent us a test at home, and we had to do the thing yesterday, and the doctor walked us through rubbing our nose or whatever. We had to mail that in on, UPS. So that was like the first test. And then when we get there, all your team has to get there at the same time because you have to get quarantined together. If somebody comes a day late, then they get quarantined by themselves, and you don't see them until fight night. So like, that's wild. You don't leave your room once we get there. All the food comes to you. There's a workout room, but there's not allowed more than 4 people at a time. No cross team, whatever crap. We'll get tested an hour before we get on the scale on Friday again, which is bizarre because like I'm already cutting weight. I already got to get up and like make the weight. Now I've got to go get COVID tested, COVID tested, whatever, before I make weight. And then I think we get tested again fight day. So it's like there's 3 opportunities where they could shut the fight down or whatever's going on. It's wild.
And are you taking the 15-minute PCR test, or which test are you taking? Because you said in the very beginning, the first test that you're getting administered in the mail, what is that? You said that's like
just a nose swab.
Yeah.
It's the same test I took. I took a free test here at one of the high schools or whatever. It's the same, except you do it yourself.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, to see some of these guys at weigh-in wearing masks, but yet the next day they're going to be rubbing on each other is
elbowing
ridiculous.
Each other in the face.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, what's your opinion on all this, John? Like, what you said? So you met Jason basically via getting into what alternative media and kind of just looking at things from different perspectives and directions and whatnot, which I think is awesome. It's cool that you reached out and you guys connected. Do you think that what's your opinion on what's going on and kind of observing, because not everybody in also in alternative media kind of agree on everything, which is good, because I mean I remember when he did a interview, I don't know if you heard the one he did with James Corbett on numbers and statistics and all that stuff a while ago, and it was really fun to watch two people kind of prove to the world that you can just share information and challenge each other's information a little bit. And
I have some really good friends who we believe completely different things about life and whatever, but we're still great friends. Like I had one of my friends is kind of hippie-ish with how they want to raise their kid and whatever, and I'm going to teach my kid about compassion and all these things, and it's basically they're talking about teaching their kid how to cuck himself. And I was just like, oh, well, that's cool that you're going to teach your kid that, because I'm not. I'm going to teach him to be selfish and dominate, and my kid's going to end up enslaving yours. I just different ways of living. Like, you can do what you want to do, but I'm preparing my kids to take over. They're going to be little warlords. They're not going to be like, sacrificing themselves for other people's ideologies. It's not going to happen.
How old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
8 and 6.
8 and 6. Oh, so close in age. Yeah, I have my boys 5 turning 6 in February, and then my daughter just turned 4. So yeah, not too far in age. Yeah, it's amazing, because so much of like what we believe in the world, after having kids, you start kind of just observing and understanding that so much of it was kind of like molded or at least influenced by other people's perspectives, right? Like they're like, it's like a clean slate. It's like being a painter, and it's like you have a clean slate, just clean white page, and then you can kind of make of it what you want. And
it's almost clean, because there are some hardcore, hardwired behaviors that are in my sons that it didn't matter if I was around or anybody else was around, they were going to behave certain ways, because it's how I was, it's how my dad was, it's in our DNA.
Well, you ever hear of that study, Inheriting Father's Fears? I talked to Rupert Sheldrake. He's kind of the UK famous scientist or whatnot, but we talked about it when he was on, and it was so they had this study where maybe you've heard of it, where they would shock a mouse every time they would spray this scent, and it was completely synthetic scent. There's no way of the mouse ever being exposed to anything like it. So every time they got shocked, or every time they smelled the scent, they would get shocked. So they would relate the shock with the scent. So naturally, over time, anytime they smelled a scent, they would have like a panic reaction, right? Because they thought they're getting shocked. Well, for 2 generations afterwards, they would have the exact same reaction to that scent without ever, going through that experiment. So it was just a experiment that kind of proved what I guess many of us believe, that it's more than just hair color and eye color. They're inheriting a bunch of other stuff, like our OCD, our traumas, so many other things are being are influencing our children, like you said, right at birth. It's affecting their DNA.
Yeah, it's I've heard about those type of things. Like they mentioned being scared of snakes and like spiders and certain things, even though you've never seen one. It's kind of ingrained into us from millions of years of people getting bit and dying from those things.
Yeah, they say the kids are naturally afraid of snakes, even because a lot of other fears that they have are because like we tell them about it, right? But snakes, it's one of those things where like it's like you're born with like the fear of snakes, and you're born with like knowing to hold your breath when you get thrown in water or something like that.
Yeah.
Are you
it was on chimpanzees were afraid of snakes too. Like chimpanzees never seen a snake, and they throw a fake snake in there and they'd freak out. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. They've done it's also interesting, because so much of what we do, we don't even realize what like long-term trauma could, because it's all perception, right? Like we think like we're dealing with this specific situation, like by disciplining or not disciplining or whatever we're doing. We never know like what type of way they're perceiving what's going on, and do they think we're being too tough on them? Do they think we're being too soft on them? Do we like, well, it's like everybody has trauma. You ever meet like a girl and they have this thing about them that either annoys them or this thing they're OCD about or whatever it may be. And then as you get to know them, you hear about like their upbringing and you're like, oh shit, that's where you got that from, right? And it's always, so it's like so much of what's going on.
I've met a few girls with daddy issues.
Yeah, yeah. Were they on polls by any chance? Jason, by any chance, are you recording this audio?
Yeah, I am. You can get the audio too afterwards.
Okay, yeah. Just because for some reason I'm getting like a little. It might just be through the headphones, but just in case this hiss that I'm hearing is in the audio recording, yeah, having a backup wouldn't hurt. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that.
I'll upload this to Dropbox afterwards. And you mentioned Sheldrake, and he had some of the best TED and TEDx talks that used to be kind of like viral on the internet, talking about consciousness living outside of just your brain, right? And that gets into the whole nature versus nurture argument, the lizard brain, what we can inherit over time, and the traits that are passed on through our genetics. Listen, it would be really ridiculous to think, especially generationally, that you take on physical traits of your parents genetically, but there's nothing else at all you learned and I have problems with macroevolution, but microevolution is so in your face, and species within themselves, human beings evolution is so in your face. I mean, just look at people's faces. I mean, you can geographically look at human evolution and be like, all right, well, black people were in the sun a lot. Look where they originate from. The white people were in the rain a lot out in Europe. Look where they came from. Obviously physical evolution had a lot to do with our physical surroundings, generation after generation after generation. And inherently, you would think that behavior would be part of that, since they say that's a part of it in nature everywhere. Why do bees protect the queen? Why do ants act the way they do to create these hills, etc.? It's inherently built into them. And to say that that's not in human beings, of course it is. And I feel that frustration, because as much nurture as you give, just like you said, there's always like a distinct personality trait that's kind of individualistic in these little people that you're trying to mold.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah, let's piss off some people, and let's just say some of those traits are boys like to play with trucks and weapons, and women like to clean things.
Dude, my kids, like, ever since they were little, that's like the number one thing they do is make weapons. Like, I didn't make weapons. I didn't have swords and knives around. Like,
well, there's great studies. There's great studies that show
fight,
that.
But like, and then like, the little one especially, he makes weapons and then he fights others. There's, all the time. That's like, oh, he didn't see me doing that in the front yard. Like, yeah, I'm a fighter and I go and I train, I do everything. They see that, but like, I'm not using weapons.
Well, they
the shows that they're drawn to, the things that they like it's I don't know, that the fact that my 1-year-old, when he first started walking, would like approach beautiful women, especially if they had legs exposed. Like, he would find his way to a beautiful woman and put his hand on her leg.
And let me guess, you have no idea where he got that trait, right? No
he
idea.
was 1 year old. Like, he might have observed me doing it, but probably not.
This is back to Mary too, when it's no use to you when you have like a little boy walking up to some leggy, pretty lady. Yeah, that's
like,
right.
it's always can't do that.
Yeah, well,
I mean, there's something definitely biological to that, because like, there's a room of 20 people, and they go to the prettiest girl or woman in the room. Like, is that learned behavior? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's not, these issues aren't black or white. They're not that easily understood. I mean, it's kind of like most things, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. My kids are the same way. Like my son's the oldest, my daughter's the youngest. She copies everything he does, and she looks up to him, and she wants. But even like having that desire to want to do whatever he's doing, if we're playing soccer outside, it's like, okay, let's go outside, play soccer, or let's go play basketball. She'll want to play for a little bit, and then she's like, no, I'm good. Like, and then she's like, oh, can I just play with chalk or her toy vacuum or whatever it may be? And it's just like, it's like, I'm not pushing her in that direction. She just naturally, like, even with her wanting to hang out with dad and her wanting to hang out with her brother, she loses interest in it much, like in physical activity, much faster than my son, who can literally run around all day, every day, never get tired, never get enough of soccer or whatever, you know? So it's like, they're a perfect example, having one of each gender, like, and observing them, and then knowing how, like, if he puts on a soccer jersey, she wants to put on a soccer jersey. If he puts on a X-Men shirt, then she wants to put on a Marvel shirt. Like, she's always copying. And even with that, she still is like, no, I'm good with playing sports. No, I'm good with like doing physical activity.
Are you sure you shouldn't start gender reassigning her? Because she wanted to wear a Marvel shirt?
That stuff pisses me off, because
my oldest wore a Tyrannosaurus Rex costume for 9 months straight when we lived in Las Vegas. Does that mean I should have started attaching getting a tail attached to him? Should I have some kind of like tail attached to him? Should I have start
feed him
paying
raw food?
feed him raw food and bugs and like start putting scales in his body?
Listen,
he really wanted to be a T-Rex.
How many people at 18 who got tattoos as adults don't regret that tattoo? Like, anytime you see a stupid tattoo on somebody, it's always like, yeah, I got it when I was 18. It's so even at 18, when you're legally a adult, your decision making is horrendous, and you're gonna regret a lot of it. So to have, and the thing is, like, to me, my biggest thing is, like, they should have the right as an adult. You should have a right, whatever you want to do. Like,
do what you want to do.
Do whatever the fuck you want to do. Like, you don't get to hit the reset button. Yeah, don't hurt anybody. As long as you're not hurting anybody, do what you want to do. If you want to, whatever, have any crazy surgery, do whatever, marry a tree.
I don't care.
Yeah. But when you're talking about children, and you're talking about like kids who, you go through pictures when you're a kid, like you go through like tons of different phases in life in regards to what you're into, as like cartoons or music or the way you dress. So the idea that like you can look at a child or even somebody in their teens and be like, hey, we're going to make a permanent decision now based on the way you think now. That's fucking crazy. And so many of them end up dealing with depression, suicide, all these things, and want to go in reverse.
It's not a fix. It's not a high percentage fix at all.
And let's just add to that, today, when first of all, alcohol has been 21 for our entire adult generation, right? But let's take it a step further. Now they're making cigarettes 21, which means once they decriminalize marijuana across the board, eventually, if that happens, that will also be 21. Really, the only argument that you can make, and I do think it's a valid one, that you shouldn't have to wait until you're 21 to, mutilate your genitals one way or another, take hormones, etc., permanently transform your body beyond repair, is the fact that we still have 18-year-old conscription in the military. And our system is designed that way to get these kids when they are 17 years old or impressionable at 16, to get them in the JRTC programs and like that, so that they can get them at a young age. Because a lot of people by 2021 are like, fuck that shit. I'm good. We've been doing,
that's the point I want to make is, how many people do you know hit 30 years old and look back and be like, man, I sure had things figured out at 15. I was on fire, bro. From 14 to 16, I nailed fucking life. I was ruined. Like, seriously, like how if you could have one person that could look me in the eyes and be serious, like, yeah, dude, I really knew what I was doing in high school, and I made all the right decisions. I don't think that person exists.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, and it's permanent decisions. Once you start doing that hormone replacement, there's no going back. Your body's never the same again. And there was that you ever hear that story of like who's his real name? His name was Dr. Money, I believe his name was Dr. Money. And what it was, so they had this.
Hope he's selling healthcare stuff. That sounds
It was a real tragic story where this parent, I think they circumcised their kid, and they were using like some new method or something happened where they end up like the kid ended up having no penis or like losing his penis or whatever. So this doctor, right? This doctor convinces them that the best way to go about it is convince your boy that he's a girl, and so they start doing this, right? And then as this child becomes an adult, he realizes like something's not right, something's wrong here, and the tragic ending is that he eventually found out and then committed suicide soon after. But I mean, stories like that exist. I mean, that's
nightmarish, Ricky. That's like
What's
like
That's
like
the horror
yeah.
show. That's a horror show.
It's like Tales from the Crypt on crack, right? Like that could be the
Yeah.
return opener of that fucking. I mean, especially for today. Forget about Black Mirror. Like that's like today. Although we are seeing more and more of the Black Mirror reality. I'm not sure if you guys caught that new story where they're taking Spot the DARPA robot and they now have accessed it with a new mount that has a tablet on it, and it can now diagnose you for coronavirus and other.
Oh.
I did see that. I think you shared that on Twitter, right?
Mini guns coming next.
Oh, I'm sure.
The next
Like,
so
thing
John,
on it.
social
You
distancing.
need a thermometer and a minigun.
What topic, John, got you really into like just I guess alternative media or alternative news or just looking at things from a different perspective?
I think I've always just been fascinated with it. I've always been an outsider. I've always been the person who everybody runs that direction. I go the other direction. I'm always looking for like why, what's going on. My dad was an engineer. You know, I think I look at things in an analytical way. I was always a big fan of, you know, social studies classes and history classes. I got a minor from Purdue University in history. I just like knowing about the stories of where we came from. I got really lucky and I had amazing teachers. I had amazing history teachers that didn't bullshit and they told like the stories behind the stories. And I think that was part of that thing too is, you know, they would talk about the founding fathers getting into fist fights on Congress floor and hitting each other with canes and the tables are all bolted down because one day a guy flipped the table over and like they had to bolt the tables down in Congress and all just like really great stories. And I had one professor used to get up and walk on the desk during lecture from, you know, desk to desk as, you know, people were sitting down and it was just fun. He talked all these crazy stories and it was like the, you know, you get the real dirt behind what was going on. Like the writing of the Constitution, right? These guys would drink all night long, pass out. They didn't wake up and go into the session until like 2, 3 in the afternoon after it started cooling down and their hangovers started wearing out. Then they would go and bullshit around, not get much done. And then all the real work got done at the bar afterwards. That's where all the conversations and all the real back and forth went to. And then whatever, the few guys who wrote the bulk of it were the sober ones who like could remember all the discussions. Like I think that was just fascinating piece of history. Like these guys basically were mostly shit-faced frat boys who put this amazing document together.
Well, it's funny because I remember a long time ago I had C.J. Werleman on. He's like a best-selling author, wrote a lot of books on religion or whatnot. But he was on. He's from Australia, and he was on my show, and we're talking about pub culture, right? And he was talking about how, like, you know, in Australia, the UK, other countries, they still very much have pub culture where people go to the pub and they debate. You know, they conversate, they debate things, they share ideas, and how when you come to America, everybody's just watching the TV or has blasting music.
I try to do that stuff with pub culture. I get the no, we don't talk about religion or politics here.
Yeah, and you know what my opinion is?
Like that's
on that?
all I want to talk about, dude.
Yeah,
that's all I want to talk about tonight.
I've said this on the show a bunch of times, and I'm like, the fact that you can argue all day about MMA and, you know, football, basketball, any sport in the world, we can argue about who's the best, who's the GOAT, which team's better, did this guy cheat, did that guy cheat? We can do that all day and get in heated exchanges. And nobody once will say, I told you not to bring up sports, but the conversations that matter, right? The conversations that matter, you know, our spirituality, you know, religion, whatever it may be, politics, or even, I mean, those are kind of
two genders.
Yeah, debate, but you know, just a conversation about anything that actually is important. If you get in a heated exchange, people are like, "Well, you know, you shouldn't have brought that up. You should know better." It's like, well, how about we say like, don't have those conversations? Like we shouldn't say don't have those conversations. What we should be saying is like, let's learn how to have those conversations in a civil way. Let's learn how to discuss these things because at the end of the day, even if you disagree, right? I mean, if you're a little closer at the end of the conversation, I mean, you've been married. Similar thing. Like I always say, like if I tell my wife, I'm like, we don't have to agree after communicating. I'm like, but
if we communicate, we're going to be a little closer. I'm going to at least have a better understanding where you're coming from. You're going to have a better understanding where I'm coming from. I mean, the definition of ignorance is basically saying, don't talk about it. I'm just going to stick to my guns, forget all new information, forget any new facts. This is where I stand regardless. I'm like, that is
staying in my bubble. Don't pop my bubble.
And so I completely agree with you. I mean, the thing with like, I'm a big cigar smoker, and I like bourbon and whiskey, and I'm Portuguese, so my dad grew up you know, making wine. And when I was a kid, I remember, like, my room was right above the wine cellar, and my dad would hang out with his buddies in the wine cellar, and they would talk all night. They make chouriça, which is a Portuguese sausage, and presunto, you know, the ham and whatnot. And they would sit there all night just eating and drinking. And I'm like, what the fuck are these guys doing down there? You know, I'm like, there's no TV down there. There's no video games. Like, what are they doing? You know, yeah. And when I got older, I'm like, oh, dude, I get it now. Like, it's just like, it's that simple thing of just enjoying something that you got, you know, that you made, but also just enjoying the simple things of conversation, smells, tastes, all that stuff, and just appreciating that. What, you know,
I think it's a non-chemical way to really explore your mind, right? Like, you know, a lot of people use psychedelics to kind of, you know, fold things up and look at things through different perspectives. And I think, like, you can do that if you can have these open conversations with people who have different opinions and have different knowledge, different facts, different things they can bring to the table. You're able to kind of examine things from all sorts of different perspectives in that way, in a similar sense of, you know, taking a large dose of mushrooms or something.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, when you know, I've had Dennis McKenna on a few times. You know, Terrence's you know, a brother and whatnot, and I think there's a whole lot of benefit in regards to anything that can cause you to just self-reflect, rethink, reanalyze. Yeah, so, and discomfort. I mean, I see that even with traveling. It's not that I do a whole lot of traveling, but when I do, and I get out of my routine of, like, going to the gym, going to work, seeing the same four walls, seeing the same road, and just getting out of my comfort zone and having just new input, right? I'm seeing new architecture, I'm seeing new buildings, new people, new whatever. I feel like it helps me get out of my very routine. My routine way of thinking, you know, like, it just provokes different thoughts and different ideas and different, you know, so I think anything that can do that is beneficial. I mean, with my kids, I bring them everywhere for that purpose. I'm like, even if they're just coming along, I'm like, there's intaking new things because it's new scenery. They might have an interaction with a new person who might say something different to them that sparks thought. So I think, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think that's why yoga got popular. I think exercise, you saw how important exercise was during the lockdown for myself. You know, I told people, I'm like, this is a health issue. I'm like, you shut down gyms. There's people who need it. I mean, I need it. I don't 100%. Function the same. I mentally, I'm not the same person. You know, I feel like there's all this built up tension. And if I don't go to the gym, it just builds up. And then I'm going to end up taking it out on my kids or my wife or whoever.
Well, if you ever had a dog or a pet, if you ever have a dog and you're not exercising that dog, it acts out. It starts chewing up, it starts destroying things. Like, humans are no different. If you don't exercise that body, like, you're going to have all this pent up anxiety and all this other crap going on. Your body's just going to get clogged up, get weaker, thinking's going to get worse. It's not, I don't know. I have a really, real hatred for this body positivity movement.
Are you talking about, like,
yeah, you're fine. You're perfect just the way you are. That's the most conceited shit ever.
Well,
really? You're perfect the way you are. You can't improve anywhere. You can't improve your health a little bit somewhere. You can't be a little bit, you know, more pleasant around people. You can't. I just think it's just a very conceited point of view.
Well, let's continue to piss people off because I agree with you. I think that I'll tell you, man, like, the few times I've gotten people complain to me about what I've talked about, and I've talked about vaccines all the time. I mean, I have Del Bigtree on, Dr. Brian Hooker. I mean, we talk about vaccines and, you know, we've talked about so many controversial issues, and yet, like, one time with my co-host who used to do shows with me, we talked about how, like, if you're overweight, like, stop saying, I've tried every diet, I've done everything, you know, this and that. It's like, no, man, you haven't. Like, it's self-control. It's diet. You don't see fat people in places where they don't have food. Why? Because no matter how bad your genetics are, right? Like if you don't eat, you're not going to store fat if you're not eating it.
America has a food addiction problem, and it's become so normalized that it's just accepted. And if you talk against the addiction, like you're the problem, people will get mad at you. Nobody wants to hear about them being an addict, and we're sugar addicts.
Absolutely.
America is a country full of sugar addicts. Sugar is more addictive and more deadly than cocaine. It just doesn't kill you as fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at what's his name, Gary Taubes, his great book, The Case Against Sugar. There's been so many people who come out with just the history of sugar, how they convinced you that like, oh no, fat's causing all the health issues. You know, I've been doing the ketogenic diet for longer than my kids have been alive, so I've been doing it for a long.
I'm low carb, and my sugar comes from whiskey.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm a bourbon guy, so I'm actually I've been trying to get Josh Barnett on because he's a big metalhead just like I am, and he just came out with his own whiskey.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
Saw
so
that.
cool.
Did you see that? Yeah. So I'm like I gotta get him on.
Someday. I'd love to do that someday.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
one thing
I got into scotch over quarantine. I started a show on Rockfin called Cauliflower and Cocktail Hour. So I'd have an excuse to like review a bottle of scotch that I never had before, and yeah, they could drink during the day and not feel like an alcoholic.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm working.
I'm working, people. Kids, quiet.
Stop judging me. I'm working. That's hilarious. Yeah. Well, this table back here, I have a TV over here, and we used to do this show called Fights with Friends. I would get friends together, and we would watch the fights. Kind of similar to, it was my version of like Fight Companion, and we would watch the fights or whatever, and drink. And it was funny because I would always say I had a way better bourbon collection than Rogan, because Rogan started drinking like Angel's Envy afterwards, but he didn't know anything about whiskey. And I'm always like, oh, this is stuff you want to drink. And then all of a sudden I started seeing his collection get better. But there's something about like the thing, it's not just whiskey, even though I do think like, being a European, I was born in Portugal. You have great wines in Europe, in Western Europe. You have great cognacs and brandies and whatnot. But the best whiskey comes from Kentucky, hands down. Like, I'm sorry, America nailed it. I did a whole show on the history of it. There's a great documentary called Bourbon in Kentucky, A History Distilled.
I'm in a very peaty place right now, and I can really only find that in a few places in Scotland. I might get past it. I was a person.
What do you drink? What's your go-to?
Man, well, I don't really have a go-to because I've been sampling. I've been trying a bunch of different stuff. But like,
You've been working.
I've been working. Working hard. But what is it, Lagavulin? Like some of the stuff similar to that. And then I can't remember the names of them, but Lafroige is a really good one. I really like that one. I think that's one I might make a staple because I really like that. But yeah, so those are a little bit more peaty. I like those. But yeah, there's I started off with bourbon, I think, but I think the cheap bourbons, like the Jack, the Jim Beam,
Yeah, well, the thing about this is the thing about bourbon, right?
They're a little bit sweet for me, I think, and I drink a lot, so I would get hangovers.
Really? Huh? That's weird. Yeah. Well, it definitely. Well, so the history of bourbon's interesting because the reason why bourbon's so like when I first started getting into whiskey, I'm always like, why am I always attracted to bourbons? Like, what is it about bourbons that gets my attention? And then then I got fascinated with it. Like, I'm sure like you guys, you get into something and then you go like balls deep into it and you want to learn everything about it. So I'm like, what is it? So Kentucky, they have amazing soil and because that's why they have the Kentucky Derby there. People spend millions of dollars sending their horses there to graze or whatnot, but they also have this amazing limestone, right? And so what happened was at one time they were giving out land for anybody who would farm corn. And then eventually they had too much corn. They're like, what the fuck are we going to do with all this extra corn? They're like, well, let's make some whiskey out of it. Let's make some spirits out of it, right? So they started making the spirits, and they realized like this amazing corn that they had from this amazing soil with this limestone, which, the water's equally as important.
Yep.
It ended up creating a very inexpensive whiskey, really inexpensive thing because corn's not expensive. And what made it unique was this combination of this limestone water with the corn. And then in the beef bourbon, you have
51%.
Yeah, 50. It has to be at least half of it has to be from corn, and then the rest of it's a mixture of it could be a bunch
barley
of
and
Yeah, yeah.
Like I
And
learned with like the Irish, they started using like the mixed barley or whatever because of the taxes. And I
really,
was like,
I
yeah,
didn't
but
know that.
they started taxing like cooked barley or whatever, or malted barley. So they started adding in raw so that they would pass on some of the taxes,
Ah,
which drastically changes the flavor and the whatever the palate of it. So like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and man, I don't know if it was Lafroig or whatever, but there was one they had legal battles over the crick because the water was so important, and they were battling over who could own possession of this crick. Like, yeah, it's crazy, like the small details that go into making these liquors. It's a lot of fun.
Well, the cool thing about like Kentucky distilleries is that most of them haven't been changed. Like Elijah Craig was a real person. Evan Williams was a
Yeah.
real person. Like Woodford Reserve, the distillery has not changed. It's like it's exactly the way it was. And so it's pretty cool, all the history of it. And then if you look at like just the labeling, the names, like it all has to do with American history. It all has to do like these are real families. They still have that very like old looking labels with like old looking logos and names and stuff. So it really is like this, it's a historic thing. And I don't know. I was attracted to the whole thing, but everybody has their thing. But one thing I liked about like scotches and whiskeys and all this stuff, and Mohegan Sun, you're not too far, Jason. If you want to go to Mohegan Sun, they have well, I don't know when they'll have it again, but they had like this big expo where it was like 250 or 300 different whiskeys, scotches, bourbons, all this stuff. You go there and you go tasting. I've done wine tasting. Whiskey tasting is a whole nother level. I mean, your mouth just like, I can't taste anything anymore. I'm drunk. I'm like, I need to take a break. But one thing that you saw, and this is what I love about the whiskey. Sorry, Jason, I'm probably boring the fuck out of you with this whiskey talk. But one thing I love about the whiskey community, right, is like, so because as you know, John, I'm sure that like whiskeys have gotten really popular of late, the last like 10 years or whatnot. So there's all these up and coming companies, they're like, oh, I want to get into this, and so you'd find all these creative things like espresso infused whiskey, this and that. And it was all these people who were trying to make like in some cases, I think a quick buck, and weren't really into whiskey because they should know that most whiskey drinkers actually like the taste of whiskey. So if you disguise the taste of whiskey, they're uninterested. So we would be in line, right? And I drank. I'm like, let me give this shit. Let me give this shit a try, right? And whoever was next to me, if we're drinking some type of infused or flavored whiskey, we both had the same reaction. I was like, not my thing, not my thing. And I'm like, it's just whiskey drinkers actually like the taste of whiskey. Yeah. So all those infused stuff, it just didn't. And this goes to when you look at the like flavored cigars and all the I just did a show on with I don't know if you're familiar with like the Cigar Rights of America. It's like this organization that's fighting against all these new regulations the FDA are putting on flavored cigars and premium cigars and all this stuff, and they're trying to say the kids are smoking a $20 cigar. No, they're not. Like, no kid's gonna spend $20 on a fucking cigar, but the beautiful thing about like cigars and whiskeys, IPAs are getting really popular, or have been really.
They have been.
I think people are drinking
annoyingly so.
Yeah, it's not my thing either.
So, yeah.
I'm like, depends on the IPA. Come on, man. I mean, there's a few out there.
I might as well just fill my mouth with hops.
And the damage it does to your testosterone.
It doesn't really do damage to your testosterone.
Beer. I used to drink a lot of beer. I stopped drinking beer because it's bad for your testosterone.
Really, I didn't know that. I just couldn't.
Wine
drink
and
more...
whiskey now. Wine, weed, and whiskey.
I'm the same way. Wine. Well, the 3 W's. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. The wine, weed.
Sometimes I'll lift weights while I'm having all three.
You added a 4th W.
Yeah.
Weights.
And then I do it on Wednesday. It's a real party.
This sounds like a conversation we should be drinking while having. But that's hilarious. But it is. I mean, do you know what it is? It's the community. Like, I think like I have friends that are like Lebanese and Middle Eastern friends, and I've always liked hookah for the same thing because it forces people to sit around, put their phones aside, and actually have a long form conversation. Like, the only way I could sit somebody down and talk to them for more than 10 seconds would either be I get them on my podcast, or we're having a cigar or having a whiskey, it's just, it brings out the best conversations because you're focused on what you're drinking, you're talking about it, and then other conversations come out, and nobody's distracted by their phones or the game that's on TV or whatever it may be. And so I think there's a real need for that, but that's why the lockdown was such a big deal, because it's like you literally force people to do the most unnatural thing, and that's stop being social, stop being around people they love and communicate and talk to people. And then the worst part is, and then you told them, snitches don't get stitches, and tell on each other, which was crazy. So it's I think there's all this like this increase in popularity of like things like cigars and whiskeys and scotches, IPAs. I think a lot of this, because back in the day people used to just drink like what was the cheapest that got me drunk, and now people are actually like we talked about. Yeah, yeah, I remember those. And but now I think people actually they're seeing they appreciate just the community and being around people and just sitting down and talking about what you're drinking and your senses. And I feel like the more we go into the synthetic technical world, the digital world, the more we realize like we need the organic physical world, like we appreciate the simple things of like, we realize that like the digital world doesn't make up for our enjoyment of community, senses like smells and tastes and stuff. Like no video game, no anything will keep my attention or make me as happy as spending some time with some friends and having a drink and having a conversation and being actually in person together.
It's a generational thing though, because a lot of kids today, they don't know how to even sit next to somebody and talk to them. Like I was on Purdue's campus, and and I was filming some stuff with my friend and whatever, and this kid's like, what are you filming for? Like giving me attitude because like I shouldn't have a right to film a public space where I went to school some years ago. Like, and then I just taught him, I was real friendly, whatever, and I wanted to start a conversation. So I was like I knew what he was doing by asking me that. He was being passive aggressive, telling me not to record. But I was like, oh no, I'm doing this stuff or whatever. It's like, how long you been here? Is this campus is it normally like this? And whatever. And you could just see him like recoil away, like he didn't know how to like answer questions, or like, why is this person talking to me? And it's bizarre that you can't even get a friendly, like, hey, what's up? I used to go to school here, cool type of conversation with somebody that's in their 20s or, late teens these days. It's really wild.
Back in the day, if we wanted to break up with our girlfriends, we had to ride our bike there and tell them in person. Now you could just block them on Facebook, Instagram, every social media, and you don't even have to see them face to face. So it is, I agree. Yeah. It's like it.
Let me use alcohol kind of generationally on what he's saying, because we were just talking about bourbon or having a beer. And like, I ran a bar before this. It's been now like 2.5 years, but the IPA thing, we've got Brewery Omegang here. We got another one called Council Rock. There's Roots Brewing Company. I'm friends with the guy who does that. All these different beers. And you're right. Those guys get flights. We do pints. We were running three pints for $5 over there for happy hours on Friday, 24 on tap, most of them pretty exotic other than 6 or 7 of the basics. And yes, I would say our generation up until like the 30s, let's say late 20s, early 30s, that's all real. All ruined by vodka sodas, Trulies, White Claws, bullshit, and Instagram. Because now it's not like, I like this beer. I like this sweet, sugary drink that I would have
I can't talk too much shit because we were Jaeger bombs and fucking Red Bull came out when I was in school, right? So vodka, Red Bulls, and Jaeger bombs, and
I would say
sex on the beach, like
generation that's still around. And like we said, it's light beer.
That's just an undeveloped palate.
Well, listen, when you're when you're a 15, 16-year-old kid, like you said, you're pretty much drinking the lightest thing out there: Keystone Light, Busch Light, Pabst Blue Ribbon,
cheapest thing.
Light. Yeah. Join that fraternity, maybe
Ice House.
I was like 19 years old.
King Cobras.
Still, like
my friend still drinks those.
That's disgusting.
He's
Can we start a GoFundMe account for him?
He's like 45, 48. He's got a kid, married. That's his go-to. King Cobras, bro. It's like $1.99.
Dude.
I know a guy who'd never stop drinking Dewar's because he's like, if I start drinking the good stuff, he's like, I'll never drink Dewar's again, and I'll go out and I'll spend too much money.
That's reasonable though, because I drink bottles of whiskey like bottles of wine.
And Dewar's has got its upscale too. There's a couple of different Dewar's.
Well, yeah, you can get the age stuff. Yeah.
So,
I mean,
like,
I'm a guy when it comes to.
When
I like that. Basil
so being in
Basil
quarantine,
Hayden's great. Yeah.
My business manager Leah Lee started hanging out with me, and we'd work from the house a lot. So like we'd get a bottle, we'd go and get a bottle, and then after we'd finish a lot of our work, and then we'd finish the bottle in the afternoon. You know, we start drinking sometime after 3, and that bottle would be gone by bedtime.
You're an animal.
How close to your fights do you stop drinking if you stop drinking?
Depends on when in my career, because I've been doing this for like almost 100 years. Nowadays, like, I mean, this is a unique situation altogether, you know. So my last drink was probably like 2-3 weeks ago, but I didn't get my bout agreement until like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So like I kind of knew I was training for a fight, but I didn't know. But you know. So
I've had some people from Bellator on the show. Justin Wren's been on. Another Portuguese, Pedro Carvalho, who was supposed to fight at Mohegan before, before it got canceled last second against Pitbull. So that was. I was
supposed to go to that. I mean, he's fighting too. That's where they're having all these fights right now. That's the ironic thing. The casino's open, but John's going to have to go hole up in his room and can't go interact with anybody. And then they have this 10,000 person arena where they could do social distancing and let people in. But instead, they're making it more production value, hanging curtains, and going UFC style. Some of the local shows are letting people, you know, the ones in South Dakota, LFA's got fans. The international shows now, KSW's got fans with no masks, Ricky. You know, MMA.
Poland's doing a lot of things right.
Yeah, Poland is doing a lot of things right.
Poland is doing a lot of things right.
So
well, all it takes is one organization. I mean, it's like the Bundesliga, right? The German soccer league. They were the first ones to start up, right? And everybody's like, oh my God, you know, the damage that's going to be done because of this. All, you know, the first goal. I watched the very first day of games. I watched the very first game. I watched the very first goal. When they scored, guys would just come up next to them and not like 6 feet away, and they would clap because they couldn't touch each other, right? It was like that outrageous. And literally, like the next day of games, like you saw like guys get a little closer. Then the next day of games, and the next thing you know, like a week later, people are like, "Dude, nothing's fucking happening. We're fine." And then they're jumping on each other, celebrating just normal.
It's superstitious behavior. That's what we're doing.
It really is.
This is all This is all superstitious behavior. That's what it is. This is like some kind of heebie-jeebie religion now. Oh my God, you gotta put your mask on and throw salt over your shoulders. You know, like don't step on cracks, or you're gonna get the COVID. It's what it is. And if you don't go along with these things, then like, oh, you're cursing everybody else.
Mm-hmm. And let's iterate. Listen, man, we now have officially 300 cases. Word on the street this morning was we were actually closer to 500. There is not one hospitalization. All of these kids have now been here 2.5, almost 3 weeks. There is no community spread outside of where they're testing for now, which is in these 3 locations.
I mean, come on. The protest and shit has been happening for months. It's been happening for months. Where are all the dead bodies? If there's no dead bodies and spikes from these protests, it's bullshit. Open the country up.
And who gives a fuck if they're testing positive? I'm so tired of people saying, "Oh, but you know he tests positive." Do you know? I'm like, but he's alive. They're all alive. I'm like, I remember Dybala for Juventus, the Italian club, was one of the first big athletes that tested positive. And I remember telling it, like, "Oh, did you hear Dybala test positive?" I'm like, "Yeah, but he's not gonna die." I'm like, "I'm telling you." I'm like, when athletes start dropping dead, then I'll be concerned. Yes. You know. And
I haven't even seen the homeless people start dropping dead.
That's a good point.
Remember what I said months ago, Jason? I said, if I'll worry about this disease when I start seeing dead homeless people on the street. They haven't gone anywhere. They've not gone anywhere. There's more of them now. I see more homeless people now.
They're reproducing.
What's going on? They're reproducing. So like, if the weakest, most vulnerable people who have no access to health care or showers can survive and not get this disease and not die, then what the hell are we doing?
Well, the crazy thing is, and Jason and I, we've talked about this over and over again, and I'm sure you have too, where it's just like fundamentally, you can't ignore the fact that we know the tests were giving out false positives. Now there's a article I just read, I think yesterday, about the test being so sensitive. It actually reminded me of the John Jones thing, where it's just like they're like, oh, the test was so sensitive that even if they found this trace amount in his system, it could have been from anything and it would have been useless to him in the first place. You know, it's similar to this test where they're saying that, like, okay, some of these coronavirus tests that are coming up positive, the virus is so weak and so insignificant that even if they do test positive, what the fuck does it matter if it's having zero effect on you? So it's like, you know, if you find this little trace amount of something somewhere that has zero effect on you, who cares if everybody has it if nobody's dying from it? So
doesn't that point to herd immunity, since what they're trying to give us anyway is a vaccine that doesn't stop transmission, or maybe doesn't even curb the mortality rate, but does give us antibodies for several weeks to months? Isn't that essentially the convalescent plasma treatment? Isn't that what it's promising? That will have a little bit of the virus that's almost undetectable, that will prevent the larger virus? So it's almost like these tests are confirming the herd immunity we already know about that exists in New York. Again, as there hasn't been a spike in hospitalizations. Today we had 1 death. It's the lowest we've been since it actually started with deaths today.
And that's if you believe that he actually died from it, which who knows? I mean, I had Dr. Scott Jensen on.
The CDC's report saying that only 6% of the people who died from COVID alone. Everything else is because they were already sick or already had something that would make them weak.
Yeah, and so I heard somebody say today,
why don't we just have those people? If you have a comorbidity or you're really old, how about you isolate? Leave the rest of us alone.
Well, isn't that what we would do during a really bad flu season? Like if you were, you know, going through chemo, you might not leave the house and go to a grocery store if it's a bad flu season. If I'm sick, I'm not going to go see my wife's grandmother with her. You know, I'm going to stay home. You know, I'm not going to go see my buddy's newborn. You know, like that's all we're asking people to do. So a lot of people on the other side, it's like, hey, we're just, you know, it's completely reasonable to say, hey, just be a little more cautious of the fact that, like, hey, if you're sick or whatever, don't see somebody who might have a weaker immune system. But that's more or less what we've done for the most part. And you wouldn't have to affect anybody's rights or freedoms. You always get I remember at the height of this shit, people would get mad at me for sharing articles. They'd be like, well, if I know staying home will save one life, then you know, then it's worth doing. And I'm like, well, guess what? If you never fucking drive again, ever, and you give up that freedom and right, I'm like, you might save a life. So how about you just do that? Stay home, work from home, never drive again, because there's car accidents kill people all the fucking time. You know, the thing is, we have to understand that there is a sacrifice we make for being free human beings, and that means that something we might do might lead to a death, which means like we never shame somebody and try to contact trace somebody when they died of the flu, right? If we find out somebody's grandmother died of the flu, we're not like, we got to find that motherfucker who gave it to her. Like, let's retrace our steps.
That motherfucker. Who was she in contact with?
Who was she playing bingo with? Yeah, no, I agree. You know, it's just sorry, grandmothers. Not all of you play bingo, I know, but it is.
I mean, and I don't think these people, they don't really care. They don't care at all. What this is it's, you know, as mammals, we are prone to stack ourselves into hierarchies. So this is an attempt for people to place themselves higher up on a hierarchy. I'm better than you. I have more value than you because I'm willing to do these things to save everybody.
You're
so
absolutely
that's really what this comes down to. It has nothing to do with them caring about anybody else. It's them caring about their status, and they think that if they play along with these games and with this bullshit, that their status is going to increase and they're going to get more stuff. They're going to feel better, or they're just going to be able to look down at other people like, oh, I'm better than you.
No, you're right.
I care about these things, so that must mean I'm better.
You're absolutely right, because a lot of people would say, like, you know, you're selfish for not wearing a mask. You're selfish for doing this. You're selfish.
And that's why I'm successful, and so will my children.
They will not be slaves. They will probably own some once they take over the world on riding, you know, two-headed horses or something.
Yep.
I could just see it now. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right, man. It is one of those things. Oh, but okay, speaking of slaves, right? in Libya, which is a fucking mess. Okay,
Slaves there now.
slaves everywhere, right? Where the fuck are the protests for those people?
For those
Where are
people.
the
What about the Uyghurs in China? Like, it's all bullshit. So if you're complaining and protesting about all this shit, but you don't mention these other things, you don't bring them up, you don't do anything, I say you're full of shit. That's the same people who have the Trump derangement syndrome, who's saying, oh, he did this bad, he did this bad, he did this bad. I'm like, okay, well, Obama did all those things too. George W. Bush did all those things too. Why? Where were you then? Where were you arguing about these things? I feel like you're completely fake and you're full of shit if you don't address all of the problems. If you're just focused on one little thing, like you don't really care. Same thing with the BLM movement. Like it's hard for me to take it serious if they're not out protesting every black on black death and those high crime cities. Like where are the plans to end that? Like what can we do to stop those things from happening? Because there's far more deaths related to that than there are from policing.
Well, my big thing is
it's hard for me to take it seriously.
Yeah. And they're not getting to the root cause of the issue, right? Like what's causing? Okay, so
war on drugs.
War
probably
on drugs.
one of the biggest reasons.
I mean, there is the system. I mean, I've had Rick Ross on Freeway Rick Ross, the drug trafficker on my show, and like we talked about this, like without a doubt, like the fact that crack and cocaine were the same drug, but you get more time for crack than you would cocaine was a racial thing. It was because you're trying to lock up, people.
Well, Nixon's on tape saying specifically why he started the drug war. That's your systematic racism right there. The war on drugs, and from my point of view, like that's like one of the only systems that exists right now of prejudice, except for the divorce. The divorce system and the family court systems.
There's a great documentary on that too. I forget what it's called, but it really went into the history of how the lawyers fucked that all up. People used to be able to civilly do it, and then lawyers like, hey, you can get a little more, because what they're really saying is I can get a little more if you get a little more. So they keep they have a motive to make things messier and messier and messier.
To just kind of back up on the BLM and all that other stuff, you look at what just happened to Rand Paul, right? And Rand Paul is probably one of the most large, constitutional proponents of police reform well before this. And they're screaming at him, say her name about Breonna Taylor.
You realize I introduced the bill. Like, oh my God.
He's the guy that wrote the bill and said, we don't want these no-knock warrants in response to it. And he's like, this mob is sitting here telling me to say her name, and they're attacking people, and I'm with my wife and our friends, and I'm the one that wrote the legislation before any of this madness.
They don't care. They just want you dead. They think you did something wrong and they need to kill you, and that's the only way they're going to be so happy.
Well, I think it's young people, and not in all cases, because obviously there's a lot of people who are just being agent provocateurs and whatever. But I think that there's a huge majority of them, or at least a big portion of them, that their heart's in the right place. They're just misguided, and they've been taken advantage of. I mean, they truly
universities.
Yeah, I mean, universities was supposed to be a place where you go to challenge ideas and learn new things, and now it's like
a bubble.
Huge
bubble.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of it's too because these professors, I mean, they look up to these professors. So whatever ideology they have, they can mold their, the students. And this goes back to parenting, right? Because we have to be cautious of pushing our beliefs on our children, because you can accidentally do that. And it's like, I don't want my kids to believe me just because I said it. I'm like you, John. I grew up, a Catholic, Portuguese Catholic. I instead of playing soccer, I got into playing heavy metal. I started skateboarding, BMXing. I did everything to piss off my parents because I just wanted to be different, and I wanted to just go against the grain. And then, even as an adult, I'm still like this. And even though it probably made me a little bit more difficult of a child, it made me who I am today, like being able to question things and really see through the bullshit. And I want to do the same thing for my kids. And I think sometimes my wife and I butt heads because I'm like, babe, I didn't like rules when I was a kid. I'm not going to make too many rules now either. And unless they're hurting somebody or they're hurting themselves, I'm like, I'm going to be pretty lenient with shit, And then when you do get mad, they listen because you don't get mad often. And but I want my kids to do that too. Is that something you consciously
I consciously try to. I'll explain my point of view and why I have a point of view, and then I'll let them know you're allowed to have.
Oh, I'm losing you for a second.
Oh, hopefully we'll be back. He freezes up every once in a while on that Wi-Fi in California. Although this might be the big freeze. This could be
Oh,
it.
geez.
It happens. He's locked in, it looks like.
Okay.
Oh, you're
You
back.
guys got me now?
Yep,
Okay.
you're back.
But no, it's definitely something that I make sure I do with the kids. I give them my opinion, why I believe what I believe. Any historical or evidence that might exist that I can show them why I believe it. And then I say, hey, you don't have to believe the things that I believe. You don't have to believe what Dad believes. Like, you're going to come to things on your own. You're going to find things on your own, and you might figure out some things that I didn't figure out. So like, don't think that you have to think the way I do about things. You don't have to like the people that I like. You don't have to dislike the people that I dislike. Like, I'm very clear about that. But I'm also I'm very against lying to my kids. Like, I struggle with like Santa Claus. Like, I've never said that Santa Claus exists. I haven't said he doesn't exist. I try to do workarounds.
I
But,
do the same thing. It's so funny.
But yeah,
I'm like, I'll
so
let my wife lie to him because when they find out, they'll be mad at her.
because I'm a kid, because I never believed in Santa Claus, and I would get mad at the adults. I was like, man, I don't trust these people. They're always lying to me. It's like, but I have to play along. I have to play along because if I tell them I know, then they might not give me the presents. But yeah, but I want my kids to like, I want them to be able to pick their own opinions and have their own opinions and rationally think about things. And I'll even look at something and I'll take a subject and I'll put it out here and we'll try to look at it and pick at it and point different things at it. I just want to kind of encourage them to look all around subjects.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I tell my kids, I'm like, don't just take my word for it. If you like, it's okay to question why I'm telling you to do something or not do something. Like, I think it's very easy as a parent to just be like, do what I say, not what I do. Don't ask questions. It's because of this, or but I like them asking questions, and I should. And the way I look at it is that it also forces me to rethink why I'm making them do something or not do something. Like, because if I can't give them a real reason, then maybe I shouldn't be doing it. If I can't give them a good explanation.
I had a good advantage of being an instructor and a teacher and having a degree in education. So like, you learn how to explain things better when you have people asking questions. When I have to teach something, like, I better know that shit from every angle. Otherwise, when they ask a question, I'm going to end up looking stupid, and then they're going to lose confidence in my ability to instruct them. So like, I need to be able to answer, be able to project and not project, but predict the type of questions they're going to ask, and really have to understand what's going on and why do I put my hand here instead of over here? Why does my head have to be in this exact position? So like, being able to explain those things and the concepts to people, that's kind of helped me be able to break things down better to my kids.
Yeah, when I had Eddie Bravo on, which was a long time ago because he still thought the world was round at the time, and
For a pretty long time.
It was a long time ago. So I remember him mentioning how the importance to continue rolling when you're teaching, because if you stop doing those things, like, you'll almost forget like where people are making mistakes, or you'll forget like. Your memory's not that good, so if you haven't rolled in a long time, there's going to be little things that you're going to forget that like caught your attention, or a mistake you were making and why you're making that mistake or whatever. So yeah, I think it's super important, and to when you're in a teaching position, to like, it does force you to kind of reanalyze every movement, why you do certain things, why you don't do certain things. So I'm sure there's a whole lot of benefit in that. I should have had a question. Sorry. But so in regards to just you said you're really into history and alternative perspectives and whatnot. Is there any like part of history that's really fascinating to you? Like, are you a World War II buff?
So one of the most fascinating things to me right now, it kind of is just the most bizarro, deja vu, like, weird thing, and it started back in like 2015 or so, and it was I had 2 semesters of East Asian history, and it was China, right? And it was China right before Mao and during, and that. So basically, we had a TA from China, and I didn't understand at the time, but she was. I thought she was afraid of us, the students, because she was new. She was from somewhere else. But I realized now that she was terrified because she was talking about China, And she was telling us about the evil communist stuff of China that she's experienced. And she was probably afraid that she was going to get in trouble for saying these things, you know? And I couldn't get over like how messed up it was and how backwards it was. And I couldn't believe that what they were doing to their people and shaming people and people who wouldn't, you know, who didn't know all this, whatever crap in the little red book, and all the college kids shaving people's heads and putting banners on them and shaming them. And then fast forward to, you know, the US in 2014, 2015, it's like it's happening again. And that's exactly what all this woke social justice stuff is. It feels exactly like reading those books about the Great Leap Forward. The students like going out and shaming people for not supporting communism and then eventually killing everybody.
Yeah, to me, it's always super fascinating learning about any country's history and like their philosophy, their culture. You know, in America, especially me being born in Europe and having a lot of family overseas, it's amazing how little Americans know of any other place outside of their own country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're just they don't know anything.
They don't even know their own country that well.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, very good
They
point.
really don't.
Yeah,
They don't know American history. They don't know American a lot of the American culture and where we came from and why certain things exist the way they exist.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is, and I think that's why sometimes it's easier to trick Americans into believing bullshit than other people in other countries. You know, it seems like, you know, we could trick them into a war with this country and tell them they're bad, you know, and yet Iran's like, wait, do you remember the coup in the early 50s? Do you remember, you know, like you know, or hey, the Middle East is a mess. It's not because of us. It's just a mess. That's why we need to go there. It's like, no. Do you know the history of the Middle East and you know, the Sykes-Picot agreement when they carved up?
I really understand. I feel like I really understand why that happens now. And it's Scott Adams' book, Win Bigly. I don't know if you read it, but he breaks down. He breaks down basically, you know, we think that we are 90% rational. We make decisions based off of rational thought, 90 and evidence, 90% of the time, and 10% of the time it's crazy, whatever stuff. But he makes the argument in the book that it's opposite. He's like 90% of the time we make decisions off of crazy bullshit. And that's what we're persuaded into believing. A lot of times we already want to believe what we want to believe. But like all this is persuasion. Everything is persuasion. So like that's why we can start a war with somebody and tell the American people they're bad. It's because they use persuasion tactics and they persuade people to believe something, whether there's facts behind it or not. And now, yeah, let's go bomb people.
Do you know who Edward Bernays is? He's the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He wrote, you know, basically he did write the book Propaganda, and all his techniques that eventually end up being used in everything from PR to marketing to all this stuff. It was used to sell war.
Pick up too.
Yeah.
Well, he's the one that Swimming to Smoke. He's the one that made that. See, it was then bragged about it later. And yes, he coined the term propaganda with the book Propaganda. And the really interesting thing about that book that I highlighted in Invisible Empire is like right in the introduction, he talks about how those that actually pull the strings and rule the world are names that you will never hear about. And they're the ones that mold the minds of men. Well, and that holds true today.
They talk about Bezos and whatever being richest man in the world. Hey, there are people with way more money than Bezos, but you don't know their name. And you never will.
They're probably from Saudi. Yeah, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, no, it's true. You ever hear those stories of like the celebrities, the women who get, you know, some ridiculous amount of money to go party on some freaking boat with some Middle Eastern prince or something like that. Oh. And you hear about that stuff all the time. I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's the money that you see and you know of. I'm like, there's people out there we just don't even understand. Like
no concept of that many zeros.
And that also means incredible influence, right? You have that much money, you have a lot of influence. You have a lot. I mean, look at Saudi Arabia, the influence that they have all over the world. You look at a lot of these rich countries. I mean, it's crazy when you think about like how many of our conflicts are because of Saudi Arabia. You know, and yet that's how much influence they have. You look at Iran. There's a great front lines on a few.
What does China have their fingers in? You know, like they're probably got a little bit of something in everything.
Now, yeah, well, the thing is about China too. What makes them a little bit scary is the fact that they don't start wars. That's not how they control things. That's not how they influence things. You know, they're not invading anybody. It's not going to be that blatant. You know, it's
Well,
it's
now they're not invading with soldiers, but they'll buy up all your land. They'll steal your technology.
yeah. And guess who was some person to blame for that? How about Bill Clinton and the WTO, huh? The World Trade Organization. How about we, NAFTA, all those good things about just messing up our economy here. All those great democratic ideas, but
Screw the working class. Let's send all the jobs somewhere else.
Well, Rockefeller, Nixon, and Kissinger in the generation before, people like Joe Biden, George H.W. Bush, they all helped erect this modern red state. And even who is it? Peter Hitchens, I think Christopher Hitchens' brother, actually, and Steve Bannon are actually calling out Kissinger now for the blood on his hands for erecting the modern China state. And I'm not all big on Bannon, but he's absolutely correct. I mean, we cultivated this culture where now
Kissinger's a war criminal. Like he should have been locked up for a very long time.
Another great book and documented trials of Henry Kissinger. But you want to talk? But what you were saying, John, I think is so important, and something I want to touch on again is the fact that we like to think that we just look at things logically and we can come up with a conclusion based on what looks the most logical, and we're not influenced by anything else. I mean, that's the way we put scientists on a pedestal, right? We act like scientists, attorneys, doctors.
Science has been corrupted, man.
Yeah. Well, it's like that meme. It's like, do you want to know how much it takes to buy a scientist? The same amount it takes to buy a politician. It's the same shit. Like, politicians, scientists, CEOs of corporations, what do they all have in common? They're humans. And humans can be corrupted. It doesn't matter what outfit you wear.
The press corps and MMA, they're not going to ask certain questions because they know if they ask certain questions, they're going to lose the opportunity to talk to certain athletes. So they toe the line. You don't even have to pay them extra. Like you just allow them to have their job and allow them to have contact with the athletes. Well, if they ask the wrong questions, the athletes get an email saying not to speak to you anymore.
And Jason knows the same thing with the mainstream media. Like the reason why they're so friendly to these politicians, it's like, well, if I'm tough on them, I might get ratings, but I'll never have access again. So let me, tiptoe and be friendly. So then they continue to give me these interviews and continue to being friendly with me. So yeah, I mean, everybody's in bed together.
Well, even right now. So remember, I've been talking about that Wired article that was supposed to be out by now on the 15th anniversary of Loose Change. The author got at me last night and he's like, article's finally coming out, fuck Wired, they're not going to put it out, and it's going to be an Esquire apparently. And he's just like, it was so hard for me to get this story out. And I go, let me guess, because of all the conspiracy theories flying around about COVID. And he's like, you nailed it. I mean, I literally have like the DM, because, they don't even, and I'm sure it's not even that positive of a piece on myself and my buddies, but just showing the impact of something like Loose Change and questioning a large event. They don't even want you to think about that right now during this COVID 1984 nonsense. I mean, if you see other articles this guy's written, again, I doubt it's going to be in a positive light, but it's not going to be necessarily in 100% negative light. And they don't want any kind of shine being set on people asking questions about events that have really shaped our lives and our social values.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, and we talked about it on Monday on the Union of the Unwanted about how similar some of these events are. I mean, that's another thing about learning history. It's just, the war games before 9/11, event 201 before this, and yet they keep telling you like, we couldn't prepare for this, we had no idea, and then all these documents come on. That's like, wait, you had the documents to prove that you guys were already pondering on this, like this exact same scenario. So yeah, without a doubt. I mean, learning history is so important, and really, like John said, and that's one of the reasons why I'm intrigued with it, is because you better understand now if you follow the steps backwards and find out how you got here. And I mean, with everything, like I'll get intrigued with like, okay, why does Pakistan and India hate each other? And then I'm like, oh shit, they were just one country, they were the same people, it was, so, and then it's like, okay, that makes much more sense. But a lot of times the media or TV wants to simplify things, dumb things down, and be like, oh, they're just crazy. They don't like each other because they're insane, or it's like, no, there's actually some reasoning to that. There's some history there that will help you understand what's going on. And that's that's the thing about Americans. It's like outside, like you said, even American history they're not that aware of, but definitely not aware of like what's going on in Europe or the history of communism or socialism or any of the isms.
I think a lot of people's knowledge and history on slavery is non-existent. I think a lot of people think that North America was the only country that had slaves and was the biggest slave country around.
Well, the Portuguese, which I know they were huge in the slave trade in Brazil, well, and obviously a lot of the Spanish and into South America and Central America. I mean, there's people have to think about like, why do they speak Portuguese? Why do they speak Spanish? It's not because the native people
like I don't ever hear anybody talking about the colonizers of South America.
Yeah, no, you're very good point.
It's always white colonizers. It's never with the Spanish. That was the kind of a big deal.
Well, how about the fact that like a lot of the U.S. was a part of Mexico? I mean, you look at, and then people are like, oh, Spanish culture, that's not American culture. It's like, yeah, it is. They're like, oh, I don't want to learn Spanish. I'm like, well, you do. Like, does Los Angeles sound like an English name? Like, does San Diego sound? I'm like, these are like, Spanish culture is deep rooted in American culture, because Texas, all those southern states were all a part of Mexico, and then eventually became a part of America when they had their war. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing about that. But that's also one of the things that make America great, if people can embrace it, is the fact that it is a melting pot. I mean, it is a mixture. There is no one color.
There is no other country like us. There's nobody that has this type of mix on this level.
Yeah, there's not one color. Well, it's not like you can look at somebody and be like, oh, he's American. It's like there's not one color, one shape, one size that would describe American. Where like you can look at someone and be like, okay, I'm pretty sure he's Asian, or I'm pretty sure he's, maybe Western European, or, whatever it may be. So yeah, without a doubt, that's what makes it unique. And we should embrace that. I mean, unfortunately, I think immigrants, they like to shut the door behind them. Like once they're in and accepted, they're like, Italians were discriminated against, Irish were discriminated against, Portuguese in some cases, and yet, like, I know people of those nationalities that don't want the Mexicans in or don't want whatever, and it's like, okay, I'm like, let's just remember how your people were treated. It's like, if you say you don't want them here illegally, then I can understand that. But to discriminate against any any nationality, it's saying like, oh, acting like they're not American. It's like, well, what the fuck? You weren't American either until you were accepted as one of those cultures that were just a part of American culture. I mean, now around every corner there's a Irish pub, especially in the East Coast, and an Italian restaurant. I mean, they're everywhere. That's a part of American culture. So I try to.
There's a lot of immigrants who are way more proud of being an American than a lot of people who were born here. And I would rather have them. I'd like to trade out some of these far leftist, anti-American people for some immigrants that love this country. I would love to do that. Let's do a swap. Can we do an exchange program? These people hate America so much. Let's go send them to communist China. They want communism. We can send them there. I'm sure we can trade them for some of the Uyghur Muslims, and they can come over here, and they'll probably love it here. And then they get their communism, and we get some cool people that want to work hard, and God, and Allah bless America, whatever. But like, yeah, I don't know.
They'll be pissed they can't TikTok in the Uyghur fucking slave camps, though, John.
Oh man. Yeah. What else will we do?
Well, it is funny because, like I said, I'm an immigrant, and I never actually became an American citizen. I'm still I have anchor babies, and but it's just one of those things I never got around to, because once I was old enough to vote was the same time I was old enough to realize that voting was bullshit and it was a corrupt system. So I'm like, why play along? And then I lost my interest in getting my citizenship. But I mean, I've been here since I was 4. I feel as American as anybody, even though, I speak Portuguese or whatnot. But I meet a lot of people, like you said, that get their papers, become American citizens. And I just realized that I set myself up for deportation. But I really feel like, these people come here and they're patriotic and they love America. Not that they don't love their culture, but what they love about it is those things that we're all fighting for, why we're having these podcasts and conversations.
Well, that's what's great about America is you can keep part of your culture. You can still celebrate your things. Like you go down to Vietnam Town here in San Jose during Lunar New Year, and it's fucking party. It's awesome. You know, those things are great, and that's a good thing. And I think that's a part of American culture is the fact that we can have all these things together. I just the fact that we have freedom of speech and we don't get arrested for saying the wrong thing. You know, the things we have, all these freedoms makes it possible for us to have one ideology that guides us plus multiple cultures.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. But I know I've held you guys up for a while. We should definitely do this again because there's a lot of.
For sure.
I'm sure we could. Yeah. Well, we'll do.
Maybe next time with some whiskey.
Yeah.
That'll be perfect. Well, we got to get Jon on one of the Union of the Unwanted too, so he can be with 20 of us while we're rapping back and forth.
So the next one's going to be on the 14th, and it'll be 7. We try to do it every other Monday. I don't know if you've watched some, Jon, but it's kind of like a alternative media kind of hangout type thing. And I try to gather as many people, or not as many, because I think sometimes if it's too many people, it's hard to get a word in. But we try to gather a bunch of people, and very similar to like. I was thinking like pub culture, like you're hanging out at the pub, talking to some friends, all of a sudden another friend shows up. So I tell all the guests that they can drop in anytime they want for as long or as little as they want. So as Jason knows, we'll be talking, and next thing you know, it's like, hey, look, Sam just showed up, or hey, look, Jeff just showed up. So it's kind of fun. Pat Miletich has been with us on those, and he's been on a bunch of them, and Jason's always with us, and Sam Tripoli and Charlie Robinson, a real good group of guys. But the cool thing is a lot of people from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And everybody's open to not just sharing their ideas, but also letting people challenge them a little bit. And so it becomes a really fun but casual conversation. And people have been loving it, I think, because it's refreshing to just have anywhere where you can find people who,
open dialogue. Open dialogue.
Absolutely.
It's not a competition of winning.
Yeah. Jon,
I think there's a big disconnect with people like being able to accept that you don't really know anything. You really don't. You have some ideas. The more you learn, less you know. Like
exactly.
So like if you're a real idiot, then you think you know everything and you won't listen to anybody. But like you learn enough, you start realizing, well, I kind of think these things. I could be wrong though. You don't really know.
Absolutely. No, I can completely agree with you. I mean, the older I get and the more I learn, the more unsure I am on a lot of perspectives and opinions. Like when I'm young, I'm always like, this is where I stand on this, motherfucker. And then when I'm older, I'm like, oh, this is where I stand now, but I'm not that sure. I'm not that confident. I'm still taking in information, and I'm open to the idea of being wrong, which I think more people should do. But hey, can you tell people where to find you if they want to connect with you? And
go to jonfitch.net, and you can sign up for the news. A lot available. I have if you go to jonfitch.net on Twitter, I advertise. I have a kids wrestling course available on Gumroad. I have a neck care guide, 90-day neck care guide available on Gumroad. Those are all free. And then I have a resistance band training course for people who are at home right now who are looking for some fitness stuff. I got these resistance bands for $50. I put together my whole Fitch Smash workout with just the resistance bands. So I'm going to put that up real soon too. Hopefully, I was hoping to have it up like today or tomorrow, but it might be next week. And I just been working on a lot of other stuff. Podcast, Jon Fitch Knows Nothing. It's Sundays at 7. And Boomer and Toots, Tuesday at Rockfin. I just got so much stuff. Go to the website.
Awesome. Yeah, people check it out. And I know you guys do a podcast together, right? From time to time.
Yep. Every week we do it Mondays, usually at 6 p.m. Eastern. But when I'm on the road, it's a little different. Or if he's on the road, but we've been pretty true to it. We haven't really missed a week. And when we did a watch along with fights. It's been a really fun show, and hopefully maybe this year we'll gear up and get a third person. This was a really fun time to do with you, Ricky, and add a new dynamic to it. But it's nice to be loose enough that you get to talk about sports and maybe bring some people in that are fans of that, and have intellectual conversations about what's happening in the world without screaming at each other, and being able to have a different perspective. Me and Jon don't agree on everything, but we don't hate each other when we don't. We're not like, you need to leave the fucking country, like it's not that way. And it's fun and entertaining. And I'm trying to bring people in, man. I'm not trying to preach to the choir. The more people that I can get to look at what's really going on in this world, the better, because start thinking for yourself. Start having discernment. We have so little of that, especially
Critical
right now.
thought.
It's more important than ever.
I completely agree. Yeah, so follow these guys on Twitter, Instagram. Hopefully you see them on the 14th on the Union of Unwanted. Maybe we'll talk even before that. We'll hang out and get hammered. And then, I mean, imagine if we talked about all the same topics we talked about today, but annihilated. Like, we'd really piss people off.
Yep.
Like,
Cancel.
fuck those
Okay.
chicks with dicks. Yeah, fuck them. Of course, I had to end it with that, right? That's the lasting impression
The
of my
last
show.
soundbite.
This is what we do here. Real professional, Rick. But thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks, John, for the time. And
problem,
hopefully we
thanks
talk
for
again.
having me.
Hey, thanks. And we'll keep in touch. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Guys, check you later.